Hi everyone, and welcome to the 10th week in our GCSE Poetry Revision Guide series. If you haven't seen any of the videos on this channel before, we've been looking at all of the major things that you need to be focused in on when you're doing your poetry essays, whether that's poetry anthology like power and conflict, love and relationships, that sort of thing, or whether it's the unseen poetry section as well. So you need to look at things like structure, language, rhythm, rhyme, themes in the poems. You need to plan it properly using this thing called Art Wars or Cart Wars, which I've also explained. And then we've been going through some model answers. So feel free to check out some of those previous videos. Today's lesson, we're going to be going through a model unseen comparative answer. So the unseen comparative is different to the seen or anthology comparative. They don't expect you to put any context into it because obviously you've never seen the poem before, so you don't know when it was written or who it was written by and stuff. It's comparative in a sense, like you don't actually have to massively put huge links between the two poems, but you ideally just sort of explore the similar things within the two poems. So we're just going to dive into this answer. Now, this answer is a little bit longer than most of the exam boards would need. So for many of the exam boards, the unseen comparison is only sort of 8 marks. Obviously, if it's an 8-mark answer, you're not going to be writing let's see how many words this is. You're not going to be writing, well, that's clearly more than 200 words. Clearly more than 200. So word count must have made a mistake. Yeah, 800 words. You're not going to write that much for an 8-mark question. You're probably going to write 300 or so for an 8-mark question. But there are some exam boards where the comparative unseen is longer. So I decided to do a longer one to help those of you that might have, say, a 20 to 30 mark unseen comparison. So whichever you're doing, just use common sense. So the two poems that are going to be talked about in this essay are called Coat and Not Yet My Mother. So we're not going to read those poems like usual because a well-written essay, you wouldn't need to read the poem to understand the points in the essay, right? Okay, so the poem Coat is about the relation. Oh, and the question was about relationships explored in the poems. So the poem Coat is about the relationship between a mother and child. One of the main ideas is that the mother is a protective figure, sheltering the child from the harsher elements of life. So straight away, we have a really good, solid point about how relationships are shown in this first poem. Bitter and icy describe the winter in New York as harsh. There is wind and snow. The speaker shelters just behind her mother, so she would stop the wind and the snow. Here, the poet uses the weather as a metaphor for the struggles of growing up. This could also be pathetic fallacy. The emotions of the young child are reflected in the bitter weather. Also, the poet wants us to think about the safety that the mother provides. All winter, like her walk-in closet, its yellow light, I would walk into her, shake out my raw thoughts. The simile of the walk-in closet creates the idea that the mother's presence provides a safe space for the child. A closet is the American word for wardrobe, which contains the clothes of the mother, and so links to the idea of the coat. It has a yellow light, which has connotations of happiness and warmth, and the metaphor shake out my raw thoughts suggests that this is a place where the speaker feels safe and happy enough to let go emotionally. So that's a really good paragraph, isn't it? It's analyzing two major quotes. We've got the metaphor and pathetic fallacy in the first bit, and then we've got the simile and the imagery and symbolism of that simile in the second bit. You could go even deeper. The fact that her mother is a yellow light at a time of winter could be she's like an artificial sunshine as well. So even in the winter, when it's cold and dark and you don't get to see the sun, the mother being a yellow light or being compared to a yellow light suggests that she brings warmth and joy like the sun would. Either way, really good paragraph on Coat. Another idea is that the mother will not be there forever, clinging to my mortal mother. The alliteration of mortal mother draws attention to the mother's mortality. The word clinging suggests that the child wants to keep her like this forever. I think it is called coat because the coat acts as a metaphor for the mother. It's a good idea if you have some link to the title of the poem to include that in your analysis. That can be really effective. So it's really good that this student has done that. When you wear a coat, it protects you against the cold. It keeps you warm. In the same way, the mother is able to keep her child warm even when she feels literally and metaphorically cold. The Final image of the poem is the pair making their slow progress down that black, warm street. The bitter, icy winter becomes warm. The bright white snow becomes black. Just like a coat, the mother makes even the harshest of circumstances bearable, perhaps even a pleasure. So we've got two well-developed analytical paragraphs on coat first, and that's totally fine. In the poetry anthology, I would recommend that you sort of zip from poem A to poem B and then zag back to poem A and then poem B. So poem A, B, A, B, A, B across your three. For the unseen particularly, I would just do a big chunk of what you want to say about A, first poem, poem A, and then a chunk on poem B. So this is perfectly formatted in that sense as well. The poem Not Yet My Mother is also about the relationship between a mother and child, but in this case, the mother is also the child. So there's a little bit of an introduction here of how there's a comparison between poem A and poem B. So that's nice, just a little first line to show that you are kind of comparing them as you analyze this second poem. One of the main ideas is that children bear the imprint of their parents. The speaker makes the photograph of the mother for a photo of himself. Mistakes the photograph of the mother for a photo of himself. But what caught me was your face, which was mine. And I thought just for a second that you were me. The line, which was mine, is the shortest in the poem, drawing attention to itself as a key moment. So this is great use of structure. It's really good to look out for things like line lengths, sentence forms, enjambment, caesura, interesting punctuation, all that good stuff, and show how that use of that can really emphasize certain moments in a poem. You can also talk about that in other texts, not just in poetry, but that's really good. The line being the shortest draws the eye to it, draws attention to it. Really perceptive point. It sounds odd because we know that the face is actually the mother's, not mine, but the line draws attention to the strong resemblance between the mother and son, which is so strong that he thinks that you were me. The monosyllables here slow down the pace, and the caesura of the commas has the effect of marking out the moment or second where the speaker mistakes his mother for himself. This reminds us of the connection between a mother and daughter. In Coat, it is as if they are joined as one person walking as one. So this ending point, bringing it back slightly to how it compares to the first poem, is very effective. So start your paragraph with like just a little link of how it maybe is similar or different to the first poem when you get to talk about the second poem, this is obviously, and then maybe finish your paragraph with just a brief comparison back. So the fact that there's this similarity between mother and son reminds us of the connection between mother and daughter in the first poem, right? So it's not huge comparisons, it's just like a few little lines here and there to draw those similarities and differences. Also, the poet wants us to think about age and how we often make judgments about people because of their age. So we've got a second point here about relationships between people in terms of their ages, all of which told me again that this was you at 17, holding a horse and smiling, not yet my mother. The phrase you at 17 has a disorienting effect. Already the speaker has mistaken his mother for himself. Now he makes the mental leap of his mother being a teenager. That's also called analepsis, just so you know, analepsis. I'm going to put that in. Really good word to use if there are sort of flashbacks, analepsis. It reminds us that all mothers and fathers were children once too, and that we sometimes forget this. In Coat, the different ages of the mother and child are much more clearly delineated. The image of the child reaching just under her arm emphasizes the height of the mother in comparison to the daughter. Coat celebrates the difference of age, whereas Not Yet My Mother plays with the boundaries of it. Yeah, that's not bad. It's maybe a little bit more limited than the first point, but it's again an interesting thing about how the relationship is affected by age, and that's quite good. Another idea is that children not only resemble their parents physically, but take after them in other ways too. But then I saw the woman's jacket nipped at the waist, the ballooned jodhpurs. Here, the implication is that the child is also an equestrian. An equestrian, which is why he mistook the picture for one of himself. But that closer inspection reveals the woman's riding outfit. That is correct. I don't know why it's done it or not. And one from a previous era when jodhpurs were ballooned. I think Not Yet My Mother, I think this is called Not Yet My Mother because of the idea that, because of the idea that children are a part of their parents even before they're born, although I was clearly already your child. He sees his future self in his mother years before he was even born. We're connected to each other in strong and profound ways. So again, another thing when you're doing unseen, like I've already said, is trying to explain the significance of the title of the poem. I think that really helps you to understand the meaning of the poem. So having done that for both poems is really effective here. It would have been good for the essay here to have also just put in a little comparison to the first poem, something about the first poem. So you could have just said that in Not Yet My Mother, there's a connection before the child's even born. However, maybe in Coat, the connection is only relevant once the child is born or something, like just a little bit that compares it and connects it to the first poem again. On the whole, whilst both poems present us with the bond between a mother and child, Coat explores the nature of this relationship. In contrast, Not Yet My Mother is more detached and philosophical. It's about biology more than relationship and the way in which our genes determine who we are before we're even born. That's quite an interesting little conclusion, sort of suggesting that there is quite a big difference between the way that relationships are explored in these two poems. It's a nice little final point and idea, I suppose, to round out the poetry essay. It's a very good essay. If you're one of the people sitting the exam board that has a bigger unseen comparison, this, to me, with barely any tweaks other than just the need for maybe a reference to Coat here, I think would get a level 9. It's done language really well. It's done some structure really well. It's got some deep analysis of things. It's compared the poems a little bit without making it too overwhelming. It's a very good essay. So this is a real model of what you should be trying to do for your unseen. Even if you're doing a shorter unseen, you would just maybe do one paragraph on Coat and one paragraph on Not Yet My Mother. So if we compare that, let's just see how many words that would be. So if you just did these two paragraphs, yeah, it'd be about 400 words. Yeah, about 400 words, which is spot on for what you should be doing for your smaller unseen. So I hope that was helpful. That's how you do it. That's a great unseen essay right there. Plenty of good analysis. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. Any questions and comments, always do comment down below. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.